Here, let's bring this into the sitting position real quick.
No problem.
Thank you for your patience.
No problem.
You done a lot of like video interviews or podcasts and stuff like that?
A lot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so you had, at the end of your like Indiegogo thing, there was what was it, like a text interview, like something that got posted?
Oh, it was on Dread Central.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I did that on the ride up here actually.
Oh yeah.
From Chicago. They sent me questions through email, and I was in the back of the car, and I answered them, and they said it could have been text or voice, and text was the only way I could have done it at that point because I was in the car.
How was the ride? The road trip? How long did it take to get from Chicago to?
Like 10 hours, something like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was fun. Oh yeah, it was a fun road trip.
So who else was? Because it was you and Laura. Did you guys pick up?
Well, Laura flew in.
Oh, so but it was you and Malcolm.
Me, Malcolm, Doug, and Robin were in one car, and Barney and Sharon and Tamara were in the other one.
Nice. And how do you guys kill 10 hours on the road?
Just shooting the shit or sleeping. Will I be looking at you? Or the camera?
Yeah, we'll just treat it like a normal chat.
So I'll be looking at you.
Yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't matter because the camera kind of sees everything.
Oh yeah, no problem.
All right. So, hi everyone. I'm Andrew Polino. I am here talking with Mr. Brad Jones of the Cinema Snob fame. Brad, say hi to the voyeur who snuck into your hotel room and is watching
hi,
you at your
voyeur. Bed. Fancy seeing you here in this empty hotel room.
Yep, and I've brought it right down to this level so that, you probably notice, first of all, just how small Brad is in real life.
That's because I'm sitting down. I'm actually really tall.
Well, I mentioned because, like, you've said before that, like, you've gone to cons and people start a conversation with you by saying, "You're so much smaller than I thought."
Yeah, I don't... Actually, it's been a little while since I've gotten that. I don't get it as much as I used to because I think now... maybe from all the different movies I've been in and stuff like that. Now I guess maybe I look much shorter when they see me and stuff, or maybe they're just not surprised anymore. Because usually they're only surprised if they've just seen the Cinema Snob and I'm just sitting there.
Or midnight screenings when it's like the top half.
Yeah, or midnight screenings.
Yeah. Well, I mean, do you do like fewer cons these days than you used to? Or?
No, about the same amount. There was one year... not this year, but the previous year, where I think we did a few less than before, because I don't think we had much new to promote. Like we were, I was in the middle of shooting some other stuff, and we hadn't had a new DVD out in like a year or so. But now we've got, last January, we released that Unerotic Fantasies DVD, so we got that to promote now, and like that's something new we can have at our table, and.
You've got quite a lot to promote now because as we sit here, the Indiegogo for your latest movie is just finished.
Yeah.
Jesus Bro, you guys hit the mark.
We did.
Are going forward.
Yeah.
And I mean that's definitely one of the things I was looking forward to talking to you about. I mean obviously I've been following you like any other crazy online stalker. Anonymous comments on your Tumblr.
Excellent. Right. This is the highlight of my day.
We'll get to that in a second. But for anybody who's watching who doesn't know, it might be a good idea to tell us, what Jesus Bro exactly is, and what we can expect from it.
It's a parody film. It's the first parody film I've wrote. It's basically just a satire of all the tropes that come with, like, the recent wave of religious films, like the pure Flix movies, like God's Not Dead, and the other stuff like War Room, and movies like Old Fashioned. There's just that modern wave of Christian movies. But the movie is a spoof of like that kind of movie. It's not necessarily that it's a spoof of like religion or anything like that. It's just more like it plays with all the tropes that we see in all of these films, because on our show midnight screenings and also now the Cinema Snob, we see a lot of those movies. Those movies come to Springfield and we have to go out and review them. So, and also I kind of grew up seeing a lot of them in school back in the 80s and early 90s. So we just started talking one point, and we thought it would be funny to do a movie that's like a spoof of all of that, and it seemed like now would be the right time to do it, since those movies are still doing well.
But yeah, like the sequel to God's Not Dead came out this year.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, as far as I can tell, a sure sign that this stuff isn't going away anytime
Yeah,
soon.
and War Room did well at the box office. Like, it's its own little genre now, so it seemed like striking while the iron's hot in terms of...
And as a genre, it seems to, we were talking about this during the fundraiser, but it seems to have completely changed from like the Bible Man and Car Man and like the kind of like 90s religious videos that we probably saw, you in like Catholic school, or me in like CCD Sunday school.
Mm-hmm.
Like what have you seen from like reviewing those kinds of movies on both generations?
Well, the budgets are a lot higher on them now. I mean, if we're talking about movies like, these are made by religious companies to put out there and get their message forward, as opposed to like, the big biblical epic like Ben-Hur, Ten Commandments, things like that, or even like, other movies like Oh God or like Bruce Almighty and stuff like that. Like strictly like the pure Flix type stuff. Their budgets are bigger than things you would see like when I was a kid, like the Buttercream Gang or Second Glance or the Cristiano Brothers movies. The budgets are bigger. They seem to have the movies seem to have much more of a persecution complex to them now. Some of them can be, they're still probably just as corny now as they used to be, but they can get a little angrier nowadays and a bit more straw-man-y, whereas it used to just be kind of corny, like, hey, Scotty, Jesus, man, And
you went from kind of like the Jesus booster, borderline, Mormon church commercials to like, these movies like God's Not Dead that have a really kind of, sort of mean-spirited undercurrent.
Yeah, it's less about changing minds, changing hearts, or anything like that, a movie like God's Not Dead, and more just kind of like really sticking it to those other people or whatever, and like really kind of straw-manning them, and like the movies aren't about any changing minds or changing anyone's feelings. It's just more so about, I don't know, creating a persecution complex for themselves and just having them, having themselves go up against these real stereotypes of like the militant angry atheist, or like the Muslim dad who beats up his daughter, or a bunch of just really like black and white stuff that happened in these films. So that's what we wanted to parody.
Yeah, which segues perfectly into the kind of straw man character that you got for the center of this.
Oh, the Rickhead.
Because you've got the Rickhead, who I think is a perfect like mock-up of like the kind of condescending, loud YouTube personalities, but also could easily be like the blogger or the teacher or like the atheist in one of the God's Not Dead movies. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I get. The Rickhead character is from a series that I made a couple of years ago called The Reviewers, that was kind of a poking fun of like what we do for a living, like the whole internet reviewing thing. It was kind of having fun with that, and there was a minor character on that show called the Rickhead, who was like an angry internet troll vlogger. And when I started into my notes process on writing Jesus Bro, I knew I wanted the main character to be like this sort of angry, stereotypical like internet celebrity atheist type, and I was like, well, I do have a character like that already with the Rickhead, so I just decided to make the Rickhead the main character of the movie, even though like you don't have to have seen or even heard of the Reviewers to see Jesus Bro.
Although in the recent monologues, I think if it's possible, I think the Rickhead has gotten even louder and dumber.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's been fun to do. We made some little Rickhead videos to kind of do some viral marketing for the Indiegogo campaign, and that was fun because there were people who thought it was serious, who thought he was a real guy, and really thinks this stuff, like something about Crystal Pepsi promoting Nazism and things like that. Like, wow. So that got kind of fun for us, is like seeing how crazy we can make this character and see if people still believe him, like still believe this is a real guy.
Well, I mean, they're probably guaranteed to get pushback from religious people who see Jesus Bro and don't get the joke or like take it personally.
You know, if I get a lot of that, I'm going to assume they don't know much about the movie. I'm going to assume they don't. I'm just going to assume they're going to think that it's some atheist propaganda movie. They're going to think it's this anti-Christian or Christian bashing, and it's not. If you see the script or you see the movie, that's not what it is at all. I mean, we have Christians that are in this movie. We have people of other faiths who are in this movie. I think, you know, in talking about movies like the Pure Flix stuff and things like Old Fashioned, on whether it's midnight screenings or the Cinema Snob, there will be heavily a number of Christian people who say, like, these movies, like God's Not Dead, don't represent us. They don't represent our way of thinking, you know, they don't represent our message of love and compassion and everything. They just exist as almost like victim porn, kind of. And I think that by and large, that'll be the attitude towards Jesus Bro, is that it'll be really nice to see a movie that it doesn't have a bad or negative message to it at all, and in doing that, it's making fun of a lot of the stereotypes of these movies.
Yeah, and it does have a lot of tropes that you mentioned from all the Pure Flix kind of movies that you've seen. Now, you've mentioned the Rickhead.
Yeah.
Now, what other kinds of character tropes and storytelling tropes, just to kind of give us a little teaser, like what other kinds of like trope send-ups can we expect to see?
In Jesus Bro, you'll have like his really chuckly like black best friend. They play basketball together and go hunting together. You'll see a lot of when the Rickhead has his near-death experience and he comes back to Earth to then change his message online. Suddenly, like, he gets heavily persecuted, like ridiculously so. Like, he attempts to go hunting, but the ranger won't let him in, and then the ranger like shoots him in the foot at one point and says, "Get out of here! I don't like you. Change your message." So it has a lot of fun with that. It's we tried to fit in as much as we could of a lot of the different.
You have the girlfriend who's there to deliver exposition. Now you mean you mean like the character in what was it, Faith of Our Fathers, where it's like I can't wait until we move in together after we're married, of course.
Yeah, there's a girlfriend character in it who all of her dialogue is exposition dialogue.
How many scenes of dialogue does she have?
She I mean, the joke extends beyond that in the movie. It isn't just that, but she's in it off and on through the movie. Because her and the Rickhead, or this is the character Alison Pregler plays. Her and the Rickhead are a couple at the beginning of it, and then like his angry atheism gets to be a little bit too much. Like they're out to dinner, and there's a scene in the movie Do You Believe where Sean Astin, who's this atheist doctor, is like having dinner with his wife at a restaurant, and there's a couple across the way from him who are praying before they eat, and Sean Astin's character is just like, ugh, do they really have to do this in public or something like that? So in this, like, the Rickhead's out to dinner with his girlfriend, and he sees a couple praying, and he just turns and gets sick and vomits on the floor. Oh God, can you believe this? But I would like it if it would be funny to me if a huge fan of the Pure Flix movies saw this movie and thought it was legit, because like it's not written to be incredibly raunchy. If that were the case, you'd be able to tell right away that this is a parody, because none of those movies are raunchy. So it's not the Rickhead videos we've been doing on YouTube are far raunchier than the movie actually is. The movie really isn't at all. So it would be funny if like someone who's a huge fan of all the Pure Flix movies saw this and from beginning to end just thought this is a legit movie that has a very strong message to it, which we actually did try giving it a good message.
Yeah, so the Pure Flix says, all the kind of uplifting messages I would come to expect from Pure Flix.
Yeah, this has a better message to it than any of the Pure Flix,
well,
or at least any of the Pure Flix movies I've seen.
Yeah, well, certainly a finer message than Old Fashioned.
Oh God, yeah, that's something that gets spoofed in the movie.
To what extent? Like, what are you making fun of an Old Fashioned?
Well, the character that I play in it is kind of this bro-y, like, a bro-y version of, like, the Clay Walsh character from Old Fashioned. And in the movie Old Fashioned, like, he doesn't want to be alone in a room with a woman until he's married, which is something a serial killer says. In this, like, my character, like, can't be in the same state as his fiance until they're married, and they're getting married on, like, the Four Corners thing, and they're that way, like, when they say I love you and kiss, they can step into each other's state. He says, like, she currently lives in Hawaii just to be safe.
Well, it's bound to be a better Four Corners gag than Vacation.
Oh yeah, God, yeah. No one has sex on the Four Corners in this.
Yeah. You been to the Four Corners?
I never have.
Okay, and yet still seem to know more about it than people who choose to incorporate it in a movie.
And so we're not actually filming there in the movie, but it's just kind of mentioned in passing. But this is, trust me, this is a better movie than the Vacation reboot.
That is a bold claim, but one
Yeah,
that can be easily backed up. Now, the movie is going to be directed by Ryan.
Ryan Mitchell, yeah.
Now, how does he's your go-to guy for the directing process. He directed you in, what was it, Paranoia?
Paranoia and the Cinema Snob movie.
Now, you've done some directing too, like kind of the point of shot, like, shot and shitio.
Yeah.
And when you hand something like this over to Ryan, what are elements of directing that he's willing to go through, but kind of reminds you, oh yeah, this is why I prefer writing and acting over directing. I'm glad I don't have to do this.
Yeah, he's a much better director than I am. He's a way better director. He graduated from film school. He's done AD work on the Sharknado movies. He's an editor. He works with Fred Olin Ray right now. He's way more talented as a director than I am. He's definitely way more professional. So for something that's got a good budget to it, like Jesus Bro, or something that we want to look more professional, like the Cinema Snob movie, yeah, he and I love collaborating together. We love collaborating on movies. And the types of movies that I like directing is more the point and shoot. Like, I can do it with a micro budget, because that's what I'm comfortable with. That's what I like making. I like making more, in terms of movies that I direct, I like making more like the really dark exploitation variety stuff, like I directed a movie called Midnight Heat and a movie called Cheat, a bunch of other movies that are significantly darker than something like Jesus Bro or the Cinema Snob movie. So that's always kind of where my passion as a director has been, is like really micro-budgeted exploitation movies. Yeah.
And probably your crowning achievement in the exploitation movie was Hooker with a Heart of Gold.
Oh, thank you.
Which
I love that. I genuinely love that movie.
Yeah, that movie is an enormous amount of fun, and from the sound of it, something that you had a lot of fun making.
Yeah.
But I mean, as a director who gets to work in that kind of style, I think what I'm asking were like, what were your favorite elements of directing like something like Hooker with a Heart of Gold, and what are the more difficult parts of having to do this?
Difficult parts could certainly be scheduling, because it's certainly, when you're directing, it's certainly very time consuming. You got to handle scheduling. You got to get all of these people together. And, you're just the man in charge on set, which is another reason that I like it when Ryan directs something, because there's less of that I got to worry about.
Yeah, you can just sort of like
get
up in the
chill,
morning
man.
and show up for work.
Yeah, but with Hooker with a Heart of Gold, because Shot on Chitty was the last thing I directed. But before then, the last thing I directed was Hooker with a Heart of Gold. And in directing that and in directing anything else, like, the fun part of that is, in directing Hooker, seeing what you've written come to life in front of you. Like you're standing behind the camera and you're watching the actors act out these lines that you've written and you've had in your head for a while, and you're just kind of, you're sitting there watching this, like, you know, birth of what you created, and it's a cool thing to go through.
But that's got to be the attraction of directing anything, like from, you know, as far back as when you're a kid and your parents let you, like, you know, play with their camcorder for a few minutes.
Yeah, totally. It's fun in my case, because of the kind of director I am, because I'm certainly not a commercial director. So in my case, it's something that when I've directed a movie like Hooker with a Heart of Gold or Game Boys or anything that I've directed, you know, I'm directing it, I wrote the script, I edited it, I, you know, am the person in charge of basically everything on it. So it is cool, kind of having total 100% control on, but that's because, I mean, that it's rare you'll have a director who has 100% control over.
Right.
In my case is different because these are micro budgeted movies that I've funded myself, and you know, I don't have a big studio telling me not to do this and to do this, not to do this.
Well, I mean, you've learned how to get good at kind of like pointing and shooting on the fly.
Exactly.
Like the Rodriguez and El Mariachi style of things, where he just kind of like reuses stuff and you know, tries to figure out just how to get that scene in the can.
Yeah, exactly. But it also that, you know, we've done several me and the people in my movies have done several of them now at this point. So whenever I am directing something, we're all great at communicating with each other. Someone might suggest a line to say differently or to do something differently, or maybe something doesn't work, maybe something will need to be cut. We're all great at communicating with each other through that because we know each other very well. We've worked together a long time, and I've never been the kind of director who's like, you need to say beat for beat, word for word what's in there. If someone says, like, this sentence is a little awkward for me to say out loud, do you mind if I try changing it up a bit? And I'll be like, as long as the gist is in there. Yeah, totally.
And for the people that you're working with, you know how to write for Sarah or Brian.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, when you are doing like more of a production, like the Cinema Snob movie or Paranoia, it's over to Ryan, and he has more of you know, a say in the final product. You've mentioned a bit the writer's cut of Paranoia versus what happened. What is, like, with that in mind, like, what is like the compromise or like the collaborative process between you and Ryan when you're sitting down and figuring out how this movie
with movies like Paranoia and Jesus Bro, really, like, I hand it off to Ryan, and it's, you know, his, because we have like 100% trust in ourselves for that. Like, because with Paranoia, it was like he wanted something to be his first directing project. He asked me if I had any scripts laying around. I was like, well, I got this thing I wrote like in 1997. You can have that if you want. And he looked at it. He's like, yeah, I wouldn't mind making that. So yeah, he was a hardcore producer on Paranoia. And with Jesus Bro, like, it is like, yeah, do with this what you will, like, and everything. Because it's not going to be like, well, okay, and then he rewrites the whole thing. It's not like that at all. I was much more of a hardcore producer on the Snob movie. With the Snob movie, I was heavily into the production side of that because it was the Cinema Snob movie, and you know, I wanted it to be. I was definitely if there was any kind of suggestion I had with how maybe I wanted something shot, or maybe I wanted some line read, I was a bit more vocal about that on the Snob movie because I was, again, like I said, much more of a hardcore producer on that. So yeah, there's a lot of instances where we would give our thoughts and ideas about how maybe something should play, something should be cast, something should be shot, and we just bounce back and forth with each other. And if, you know, we both think something works, we go ahead and do it. And if, you know, it's something that might not work, we just move on to something else. In the 3 movies we've done together, we've never once had a single straight on, like, total argument. You know, he was probably a little annoyed about how, like, really producer heavy I was on the Snob movie, but we never fought or anything like that.
Well, he comes off as very, like, you know, high energy, and so, like, you know, really invested in, like, you know, in doing things hardcore.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
What else? I mean, compared to the rest of the team, like as a director, what does he bring to the kind of material that you write?
Oh, he makes it look good. He makes it look good. He makes it look professional.
Yeah, the professional, the production, kind of the editing savvy.
And he knows what. Ryan and I have known each other for a long time, and even before he directed anything I wrote, like with Paranoia, he was the producer on Freak Out, Cheat, Midnight Heat, the early movies that I did like 13, 14 years ago. We've known each other a while. We worked together out at a radio station, and that's where we met. And he knows what my voice as a writer is. Like, we've collaborated on almost 10 projects probably, so we each know what each other's voices are in terms of either the writing end of it or the camera end of it.
And he has a very good sense of the kind of movies that you want to make.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Don't mind me, I'm just checking my my phone has kind of...
Oh, it's no problem.
My phone has this app that remotely controls the camera, so I just gotta check on how much memory is left.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
It's fancy.
Yeah. Although it's gotta be really nice to have a camera mounted on the car where you can see how much memory is on.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, but anyway, getting back to the stuff that you're doing that you're doing in the meantime.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to first of all let you know I'm a big fan of midnight screenings.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
And you've got to be looking forward to seeing Don't Breathe this coming week.
Yeah. I'll be seeing it when I get back to Springfield.
I kind of feel like, even though this has been a pretty piss-poor year for summer movies, horror movies have had a pretty good... the horror genre's had a pretty good year in 2016.
Yeah. I hear good things about Don't Breathe. Green Room was damn good.
That
was really freaking good. The Witch was really good. I was a big fan of Conjuring 2. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen more horror movies this year I've liked than ones that I've totally outright hated.
Yeah, and because you're such a fan of so many different kinds of horror movies for different reasons,
mm-hmm.
If you had to figure out, like, not just the kind of horror movies you like, but what in horror legitimately scares you?
If it's something that, I can certainly see a paranormal movie or something supernatural, and it can be really scary, like The Exorcist, like The Conjuring. But me personally, the stuff that could really get to me and disturb me and scare me like that is something that plays towards something that could 100% really happen or has happened, and just goes towards the real evil side of humanity, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre or Green Room, or what looks like from the trailers of Don't Breathe. And also movies like, Bill Lustig's Maniac, Don't Go in the House, movies like that just really show, like, just what the kinds of evil that a person can do.
Yeah, and the kind of movie that really kind of, like, it doesn't jump out at you, but sort of, like, crawls under your skin and digs in. When, like, it's like comparing the Shining supernatural book to Kubrick's kind of, like, psychological thriller, and whether what's happening is really happening, or if it's all in the mind of these obviously messed up people. Yeah, like the psychological stuff can be really terrifying. Yeah,
that's a lot of stuff I like, and that's what I would like to see a lot more of in terms of mainstream theatrically released horror movies, because about 8 times out of 10 it's like a haunted house movie or a ghost story, which some of those still work. Conjuring 2 was really good. But
the original Haunting was a psycho thriller set in a haunted house.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I can edit this pause for effect.
No problem.
But I mean, like, you, in addition to those movies, you do kind of study the shot on shitio, the really kind of like trashy horror movies, like the sleazy, like, exploitative stuff. You mentioned the Cinema Snob was kind of partially born out of Roger Ebert and his kind of emotional reaction to Friday the 13th Part 4.
Part 4. Yeah.
There was another Siskel and Ebert quote that I actually kind of made me think of how you kind of study these kind of films. Mm-hmm. When they were reviewing Spinal Tap, they mentioned, Siskel said something to the effect of, the great thing about this pseudo-documentary thing is it shows that you can learn just as much about the craft and, the arts by studying something really bad as you can watching something good. Mm-hmm. Which leads me to wonder, like, what are some of the things that you feel like you've learned the most from a lifetime of watching all these kind of like low budget, low grade movies?
That I could pick up a camera and attempt doing it myself. Read Lloyd Kaufman's book, like, Make Your Own Damn Movie. Like everything I learned about filmmaking, I learned from The Toxic Avenger. You read that stuff, and if you grew up on exploitation and low budget horror like I did, and honestly, even like the indie movie boom of the early mid '90s, whether we're talking about Clerks, Reservoir Dogs, anything like that, like it can certainly give you the confidence to attempt making something like that yourself, and that's what I did. I even in high school we would make little goofy short movies together, and then after graduating high school, I would write these scripts, and I would write something that I had the means to make and actually could make, and I would just attempt to make a cool movie myself.
All right. Sorry, I think the camera has stopped. Oh, it's just about out of space.
Oh, okay.
So I think that's a good spot to wrap. So
no problem.
Brad, thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you. Anytime.
Look forward
thank
to
you.
seeing
Thank you
Jesus,
for helping fund Jesus, bro.
Oh, it was a real pleasure. I'm legit excited to see it.
Me too.